everything was different about going to delis. I showed up pretty much cheerleader. As soon as you pull in the parking lot, they come out, they greet you, they meet with your parents or whomever you bring with you. You come in, they give you like a tour of the school. On this particular day that I went for orientation, they were having what we called competition. And competition at Dudley was like a hair show that we know as hairstylists. So it's all the students getting together, and they call it competition because pretty much that's what it was. You're actually participating in a hair show and competing with your other co-peers and students to win the award at the end of the hair show.
Hi, and welcome to Start Right Here, where Black beauty professionals share the secrets to breaking in, standing out, and finding success in the beauty industry. I'm your host, Corinne Corbett. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Start Right Here. And today I have the pleasure of speaking to Cataanda James. And we are going to talk about what it's like to know your passion and to build your passion by building your skill set and then going beyond your wildest dreams, because that's just what she's done. Gone beyond her wildest dreams, beyond what she thought she could ever do. That's what I think she's done. So welcome, Cataanda.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to speak with you.
So what do you think your earliest beauty memory is?
My earliest beauty memory is probably watching my mom get all dolled up and made up and dressed up when I was a little girl. She is still very much a fashionista, but back then she was as well. She always had her hair done, her makeup done, and her eyeshadow very well blended. And she was always super fashionable. So that's my earliest memory, actually seeing my mom.
And how did that shape your perceptions of beauty?
I have a very high standard of beauty because of it, just because she was always like to the T, as they used to say, I think back then, sharp as a tack or sharp as the board of health. I didn't know what that meant back then, but I actually know what it means now, especially being a cosmetologist, because we don't have the board of health, but we do have state board. So you have to be sharp. So yeah, that's what it was.
And where'd you grow up?
I grew up in this very interesting small town of a place that a lot of people think is a made up or make believe place called Kalamazoo, and it's in Michigan.
So how did it kind of shape your beauty influences?
So, growing up in Michigan, I don't necessarily know if I can say it shaped my beauty influences because it was pretty much sort of lack of thereof, if that makes sense. I was always the little girl, the teenager, the very young adult that didn't quite fit in. And I would go out to places back then. That's when I was doing the wild and crazy clubbing and things like that. And even though I was born and raised in Kalamazoo, Michigan, no one ever thought that I was from Kalamazoo, Michigan, because I didn't look like I was from the town. And so I would always, especially with guys, they would always say, "You're not from here, are you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, actually, I am." But I think that's what it is. And again, I think the biggest memory was my mom being all dolled up, but she actually mimicked people that I would see on TV. My grandmother used to watch the soap operas all the time. And back then they used to have the beautiful feathered hair with lots of volume and curls. And my mom used to wear her hair like that. I used to see it on TV as my grandmother was watching the soap operas. And we would go out, my mom and me, or as a family. And we were always like the most fashionable family that there was. And so I feel like it made me want to do the most in beauty, if that makes sense, because the town that I grew up in was the lack thereof. And I was a little girl that went to school. Like I left the house with my makeup on in junior high school because my mom allowed it. She allowed me to embrace like makeup and doing hair and things like that when I was a very young girl. And so I would go to school with my makeup on. People that know me as the cat eye queen because I always wore like cat eye eyeliner. And I would go to school like that and I would teach my friends or even the girls that weren't my friends, I would teach them how to apply their eyeliner in gym class. So I would show up at school like that, but they would get made up while at school. And then I'm assuming a lot of them would have to take it off before they got home because their mom or dad wouldn't necessarily want them wearing makeup.
So you knew early on you wanted to be a hairstylist.
Yes.
So how was that perceived by your parents and, your overall community in Kalamazoo?
So for my parents, my mom, again, she was all for it. I used to attend cosmetology school with her because she did go to cosmetology school and completed her hours. She never became a licensed cosmetologist just because well, back then they called it, she had a real job. And so she had two daughters to support. And so I don't think, the beauty world and the beauty industry that we have today was not the same back then, especially in that little small town, Kalamazoo, Michigan. But she allowed me to embrace doing hair. She encouraged me. She took me to cosmetology school with her. She lended off her mannequins and told me to have at it. She wasn't the mom that was upset because my doll's hair got chopped off and now we have to go buy new dolls because the doll doesn't have any hair and I don't have any hair to comb. So that wasn't her. She was like always all for me doing hair and makeup alike. But my dad, totally different story. My dad is pretty much by the book. He was all for education. He's the one that told me, you can't do this. You have to get a real job. Like, how are you going to support yourself doing hair? And I was like, this is actually a real job. It's a real occupation. It is a career. And so, like, what do you mean? But that was his take on it very early on. He didn't really believe in it. He didn't like the idea. Both of my parents wanted me to attend college. So even though I wanted to attend college, I wanted to attend the HBCU, but they wanted me to attend any college. And I think we'll probably get to that later, but I ended up attending Michigan State University. I absolutely hated it. I started booking appointments in my dorm room doing hair, and that allowed me to make lots of money, but it also didn't afford me the time nor the interest in doing my schoolwork. So I was a lot of times skipping class and doing hair in the dorm room.
Well, that was your passion.
Yes.
So did you end up finishing there?
I did not end up finishing at the PW. I did get invited to leave, not only by my parents, but PWI actually put me on academic probation because, again, I wasn't going to school or class. I was going to the classes that I really enjoyed and loved, which had a lot to do with what I still do today. So I was attending my aerobics class because we want to stay physically fit. I was attending my creative writing class because I love to write and I still write today as a beauty contributor. And I've had beauty editor jobs and grooming editor jobs and things like that. I also attended my math class because I love to count the money that I was making in the dorm room. So it was a struggle with the math class because I had, I guess what they call them then, a TA, so a teacher's assistant. And he was from somewhere in Asia, and I could not understand this man for the life of me. And, trying to learn formulas and things like that from someone that barely speaks English was very, very challenging. So eventually I slacked off in my math class as well, just because I wasn't getting the understanding. I wasn't able to make those, I guess they're called appointments with the professor. And the other class that I attended regularly was my biology lab class. I didn't attend the lecture, but I did attend the lab because, I'm a scientist. So it was one of those things where I understood that you couldn't pass the lab without the lecture, but I just wanted to go to the lab because my hands were all in it and all the things. And it just didn't quite work out. So I got invited to leave from the school, kind of sort of, because when you're on academic probation, it's sort of like I think being on probation for the first 90 days on a job, you're walking on pins and needles at that point. So I think they give you the opportunity, but also I think it's another way for them to say, hey, maybe this is not for you. And then my parents were like, well, you're not going to waste any more of our money and you're going to come home. And I was like, yes, that's what I wanted to do anyway. So not necessarily go home, but I wanted to leave that place.
So you mentioned that you wanted to go to HBCU. What do you think would have been different had you done that?
So again, growing up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, we were all intermingled. There was no segregation whatsoever. A lot of my friends were Caucasian. You know, I had Mexican friends, I had Black friends. So we were just all mixed up. However, I do feel like just in our school curriculums and just the teaching styles and the things that they focused on in these classes, a lot of times, if your teacher was not Black, you weren't learning the culture. I still very much am all about the culture. See this textured hair. So I feel like it was a miss. And I just wanted to get with my people and go to a school that's focused on that. Yeah, you can minor and major in other things, but you're going to get the culture at this HBCU. So I think that would have been the difference. Also, the school that I wanted to go to was a smaller school. I wouldn't have had to trek it across literally the city because Michigan State is located in East Lansing, which East Lansing is only Michigan State. Like there's nothing else there but the school. And so I was also a kid that may have been a little privileged because my mom like drove me to school every day. I don't think I walked to school since I went to elementary, upper elementary, and that's because it was like a couple blocks away. Now I'm trying to have to figure out how am I going to get across the city to this class in like the blizzard. And I was trying to ride a bike and all of that. If I had gone to this HBCU in the South, I would have been warm. I wouldn't have had to trek it across the whole entire city in the blizzard. And it just would have been a much different experience. Again, grew up in Michigan, going to the South, getting that weather where, you know, no snow, pretty mild temps, even in the winter. I just was trying to make a change.
Right.
I didn't choose that school. I was pretty much forced into that school. They let me in like last minute. I don't know why. My grades were pretty good is part of the reason, but then also my sister had previously attended school, so she knew all these people. So sometimes it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. She made a couple calls. I was on my way to orientation. The last minute, literally all this happened in like 24 to 48 hours. And there was.
So you came home and what did you decide to do?
So I went back home. I decided to go back to cosmetology school because at this point, I know this is what I want to do. I have to get licensed. I was very, very dead set on that. I think my mom sort of like set the tone for that because she was in cosmetology school. So I was attending that when I was a little girl. So I knew the importance of it. I knew that it put you on another level. I knew that legally you had to have a license in order to work as a cosmetologist in salon. I didn't want to stay in the basement or on the porch or in somebody's bedroom or in a dorm room for the rest of my life. So I had to go and get the license. So I went back to cosmetology school, which was a different school that I attended previously in high school. I had this same experience though, because again, it was a predominantly white cosmetology school where they weren't focused at all on textured hair. The only focus was getting the practical hours in for doing relaxers and things like that. So I went back. At this point, I was already on the floor. When we say on the floor, that means we're working on people on the floor doing our practicals and our theory. So I was already out there with the little old ladies giving them these curly perms that I was so tired of giving. And so it just wasn't working out for me there either. I wasn't learning anything. Seeing as how I was pretty advanced when I went to the first cosmetology school in high school, same experience, wasn't learning anything. I actually found myself teaching them how to do things, extensions and braids and things like that. Got to this school, same story. I was there more so just to put in the additional hours that I needed. But it's hard to put in your additional hours that you need when you're not enjoying the environment, the space, or the atmosphere that you're in, and you're not enjoying the type of services that you're providing. If I'm doing perms all the days of my life, like it got very boring. So one day I went into the break room and there was a bulletin board, and this bulletin board had been there forever. I had not seen this brochure that I came across on that particular day. And I still say to this day that it was placed there by an angel from God, because why and how did this brochure get into this break room at this school in this town?
Right. From a competitor, so to speak.
So from a competitor, I wouldn't say direct competitor, but definitely a competitor. So it was sort of like someone put it there to say, hey, if you're not getting what you need from this school, you better go over to this one. So lo and behold, the brochure was all about Dudley Cosmetology University in Kernersville, North Carolina. I picked up the brochure. I read it throughout my break time. I was immediately intrigued. I snatched it up. I did not place it back on the bulletin board because, like I said, this was for me and I knew that. I took it home with me. Took it home with me, decided to do more research, which was really challenging back then because I don't know if I should date myself too much, but I think I'm already dated. People know that I've been in this business 30 plus years. So we didn't have the internet to Google around, to have them tell us everything. I had to pick up the phone and call these people and ask the questions and get the information. And there was no like reviews that I could find online to say like, oh my gosh, everyone loves this place or everyone hates this place. I had to get all of that from my conversations when I made the phone calls. And that's what I did. Gave them a call, got the information. They were so encouraging, so just like inspiring, just the conversation that we had. It was all about textured hair, the hair that grows from my head, the hair that I had worked on all of these years prior to even going to cosmetology school, and the hair that I was missing doing in two cosmetology schools already. So, mind you, I was a double time beauty school dropout. So I dropped out of beauty school twice. And I was like, I have to go to this school. Like, I have to get to this place. Like, I don't care what or how, but I'm going to get there. So I had the conversation with my parents because, again, they're still like, okay, what are you going to do? You need to do something. And I'm like, well, I'm going to go back to cosmetology school. They're like, you're going again. Well, this time, again, we're not paying any of our money. So you're going to have to like foot this yourself. So I'm like, okay, cool. Didn't take much time because, mind you, I was making money. Like I had been making money as a little girl doing hair, but really making money in the dorm room. Those people were spending their grant monies and scholarship monies with me doing hair. So I had a little bit of money saved up. And at that time, I was working part time in a bank as a bank teller, again, counting that money. So I had money saved up, and I was like, you know what? This is what I want to do. I am going to invest in myself. This is where I want to go. If I don't go here, I'm not going anywhere because remember, I got sidetracked into going to another school that I didn't want to. So I was like, I am going to do what I want to do. So that's what I did. I got everything set up. At the time, Dudley used to have dorm rooms, but they were just like doing away with the dorm rooms. So they had started a program where they would match you with a roommate to live in an apartment to attend the school. And so when my parents found that out, they were like, oh my gosh, how are you going to live in an apartment at this point? I think I was like 18 years old. I'm like, it's too late now. I already have the roommate. I already found the apartment. Like, y'all told me to figure it out. I figured it out. So there's no turning back now. And so I moved, packed up everything. And so my mom, my sister, and my cousin drove me to North Carolina to Dudley, and they dropped me off. And here I am today because of it.
So, how long was the program?
So I again was completing my hours. So I wasn't in the full program. So at that point, I only needed, I feel like, six or 700 more hours. And in the state of Michigan, you had to have 1,500 hours. So I was well past halfway through. And so 6 to 700 hours would have taken me like a few months if I went regularly as I should, which I had never been known to go to cosmetology school regularly because I hated it. But so it was like 3 months because I went in, I feel like it was January or February. And I was done in April, May, but then we had graduation in June. At that point, I was at the tail end, so it was really quick turnaround for me.
So, what was different about going to Dudley's?
So everything was different about going to Dudley's. I showed up pretty much cheerleader. As soon as you pull in the parking lot, they come out, they greet you, they meet with your parents or whomever you bring with you. You come in, they give you like tour of the school. On this particular day that I went for orientation, they were having what we called competition. And competition at Dudley was like a hair show that we know as hairstylists. So it's all the students getting together and they call it competition because pretty much that's what it was. You're actually participating in a hair show and competing with your other co-peers and students to win the award at the end of the hair show. So I showed up on that day and I was just like, oh my gosh, I was enamored. It was so cool. I'm like, how do we get to do this? And we're only students. Everyone there was equally talented, if not more talented than I was. The instructors were so talented, well informed. They knew their education, their theory, and they weren't playing any games with you. Like, this was a very, very, very serious, I'd say, staff of instructors, but also just everyone there was serious about this beauty industry and doing hair and makeup and everything. So that was the biggest difference. I felt like I finally fit in somewhere and I felt like I finally found my people and my place.
So, what did you learn there that you took with you for the rest of your career?
So Mr. Dudley, he was so big on business first, like the business side of cosmetology, where I hadn't gotten that in either of the two schools that I was in. They were just solely on practical and the theory. Well, Mr. Dudley was like, yes, practical and theory, but you need to know the business side of things in order for you to make a living for yourself, in order for you to thrive in this industry, in order for you to get clients, retain clients, in order for you to sell retail to make more money for yourself. Like, you have to know the business side of this. And that's what the focus was. You had to show up looking as if you were already professional. In the other schools, we wore white smocks and things. And this one, you had to dress like you were there to work, even underneath your white coat. And so that's the thing that pretty much inspired me and empowered me, because I'm like, wow, this is business. This is a real job. Like, this is a real thing. And so that's what I take with me still to this day on any job that I go to. You show up, you look the part, you act the part, you utilize your customer service skills, because customer service is everything. Mr. Dudley started off selling hair products. And so how do you sell something if you don't have good customer service skills? And as a hairstylist, you're selling your services. You may not be necessarily selling the product, but you're selling your services. You're selling yourself. So that's what it was.
I think that's great. So, after you obtained your license, did you go back to Kalamazoo?
Oh gosh, unfortunately, I did. Well, I went from school back to Kalamazoo because I was going to get my license in Kalamazoo or in the state of Michigan. So I went back to Kalamazoo. I got my license. I passed state board tests on the first try, which, like, I wasn't for sure. But that's another thing that they taught us really well at Dudley is how to pass your state board. It was part of the curriculum to do state board practice prior to exiting the school. So passed the state board, got my license. I started working in a barber shop. And that was really interesting because the shop owner was a barber. I was the only stylist in the barber shop. And pretty much I had to do a lot to build my clientele. Granted, I had clients from all the years of me working, but now I had to get more clients because I'm actually working in a salon and I have overhead because I need to buy all these products. I have to pay commission. I think I started off on commission with him and then I eventually went to booth rental. But I had to pay some things. And so I needed more clientele than what I had. Not to mention, I wanted a diverse clientele. So all of the clients that I retained from being just a non-licensed person working in the basement and at my house and things like that, even prior going to cosmetology school, I needed to have additional clients. So I had to do marketing. And marketing then looked much different than marketing does today. So I had to get the actual physical business cards. It wasn't cheap. You had to print them out. You had to get them laid out. You had to really beat the pavement. So now we have Instagram and social media and all of that. But back then, I had to take my pictures on a Polaroid camera, made sure that I shook it so it didn't come out blurry. And that was like part of my business card is showing these Polaroid images to people of hair that I had previously styled. So it was a lot to get started. However, the owner was very helpful and telling the wives of his clients, which were mainly men because it was a barbershop, and then telling, his friends that were women and his wife's friends and all that. So I built my clientele up to where I needed to be really quickly. And that was that. I was rocking and moving.
So, was it different starting out at a barbershop and working on men to start?
Well, so I never started working on men. I was still doing my ladies. I was in the back of the barber shop, but that was the difference because I wasn't getting walk-ins for women hairstyling. It was men coming in for walk-ins, which is why he was helping to promote me and things like that. But it was still very different because working in a salon, you sort of like feed off of your other coworkers and things like that. Sometimes you can get clients from your other coworkers because if it's something they don't specialize in, they're like, hey, but my coworker over here, she specializes in that. So there's none of that. And then I started sort of like to supplement my income. He started asking me to shampoo his clients because he didn't really like doing shampoo, which a lot of barbers, they don't really like that. I feel like there's more of barbers getting into that now and they do that because they have like these specialized services and things like that. However, back then people just wanted to come in, get their hair cut, and that was that. So I started shampooing his clients and that didn't necessarily go over so well initially because they started tipping me for the shampoo more than what they were paying for the haircut. And so guys in barbershops especially, they talk and you have this pretty girl in the back shampooing the hair and giving them a scalp massage and doing all of this. And so I feel like because I never told them or told him how much I was getting tipped, I feel like they started telling on themselves. And so Paul is his name. We're still really good friends today. Now he's calling me and asking me questions and for advice and guidance and things like that. But so Paul was like, I'm having you shampoo. What are you telling them they have to pay? I'm like, I'm not telling them anything. I'm just shampooing their hair. And I just let them know that they have to tip me or it would be nice for them to tip me. And they're tipping me what they feel like my shampoo is worth. And so, he couldn't argue with that. He was like, yeah, okay, I understand. I see you're a hustler. Okay, that's good. That's good. I'm proud of you. And so then we had a conversation. I was like, oh my gosh, well, I never knew how much you charge for a haircut. But literally, I would get sometimes $40 tips. And haircuts back then were like $10. Now, granted, not from everyone, but because he had a lot of like businessmen and doctors and things like that as his clientele. So those were the ones that were tipping.
Giving me like really nice tips.
Exactly. It was really good. So I continue to do that, but I feel like that's the part that was much different is I had to learn how to, and I really hate this word, but I had to learn how to pivot. And so I don't think I ever thought that I would be sort of like the shampoo girl because I was a licensed stylist. That was not part of the plan, but I became the barbershop shampoo girl in addition to doing my clients. And it ended up working out very lucrative.
Right. But you ended up working at Supercuts at one point.
When I tell you I worked in every salon in Kalamazoo before I left, I had to find again my, I guess back then I wasn't necessarily seeing it as that, but find my niche or my niche. And so I was going from salon to salon. Like I worked at the barber shop for like 2 years or something. And I was like, I need something different because I just felt at that point stagnated. But then he had brought in another stylist finally. So we were sharing the space back there. She was a little interesting and very, I feel like she should have been working in a spa, not a barbershop slash salon. But I like to talk to my clients. I like to have fun with my clients. I love to laugh. Like we're having a good time doing this hair service. And she was just, and I was like, you know what? I gotta get out of here because this is not gonna work out. There was like no partition or no wall or anything between us. We were just in an open space. So I decided to leave. Now, at what point I went to Supercuts is I decided to leave the town because I was always trying to get out of that place. So I decided to leave the town and I went to Grand Rapids, Michigan. And so I didn't have clients in Grand Rapids. They were in Kalamazoo. Grand was like 45 minutes to an hour away. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go work at Supercuts. So I went to work at Supercuts. People are like, you're going to go work at Supercuts? All they do is haircuts there. And do they even do black haircuts? And yada, yada, yada. I'm like, well, I'm there. I'm a black girl. I do all hair. So if they're not, they will be because I will be. So that's what I did. I went to work at Supercuts, and it was one of like the best decisions I ever had made because not only did I get a chance to really hone my haircutting skills, because still to this day, haircutting is one of my favorite services to provide, and I'm really, really good at it. But I'm really, really good at it because of Supercuts. Like they taught efficiency, and efficiency meant you had to do 4 haircuts per hour. So you're banging out a haircut every 15 minutes. And people that know me, people that work with me, clients and things like that, I can be slow. If I have the time, I'm not going to rush through anything. I'm going to take my time and people perceive that as being slow. And so it got my speed up and my productivity up. And then I was able to do not only women's hair, but I was cutting men's hair and I was cutting women's hair and I was cutting kids' hair. It was very diverse. And so it kept me interested, it kept me busy. I was getting paid hourly there, but also tips. And again, me and that shampoo, I could do a good shampoo and people love to tip me very well for it. So, especially the guys that came in there. And at that time, haircuts at Supercuts were only $8. So I was working on an hourly pay, which thank God, because $8 a haircut, I guess if you're doing 4, that's like $32 an hour. Not bad, but it wasn't going to be enough for me. So in addition, the biggest perk, and this is one of the reasons why I chose Supercuts and not some other chain salon, is because they did tuition reimbursement. So that second cosmetology school that I went to in Kalamazoo, I got a loan for that, like a student loan. And so that student loan had to be paid back. So they helped me pay back that student loan. They matched whatever I paid. That was like the biggest perk of it all. And that was paid off well before I quit working at Supercuts. So yeah, I went to Supercuts. I had worked at all of the like I guess you could say mom and pop shops to the very upscale salons in Kalamazoo. And then I went over to Grand Rapids and worked at Supercuts. I then moved back to Kalamazoo from Grand Rapids and I transferred to Supercuts in Kalamazoo and started working there some more until I found another salon to work at. But yeah, I've worked in so many different types of salons.
So, when were you ready to leave Kalamazoo?
Oh, I was going to leave Kalamazoo like at 7 years old.
No, no, no. But professionally, you had honed your skills there. There came a time that you said, okay, I feel like I'm ready now to go as a hairstylist. I'm ready to go.
So I feel like I was always ready, but I got to the point where I was really fed up and I started to lose passion a little bit. I started to lose momentum a little bit. And so when it got to that point, I knew it was time to go. And it was actually in 2002 when I left and I went to the DMV area. I moved to the Baltimore area first. This was when they had the sniper. And I had made my decision to move, and the sniper wasn't sniping at that point. But in the midst of that, me preparing, because I was still stacking my money and doing all the clients that I could before I left, the sniper came around and people were like, "Are you still going? The sniper's there." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm getting out of here." Like, rather be there with the sniper than here and just twiddling my thumbs and nothing's happening. So I was like, I'm not letting that deter me. I stepped out on faith and went there. Lo and behold, they caught the sniper, well, the snipers. I want to say, like, I moved there in October. They were caught like a month or two prior to me going there. Like, it was very like timely. And so by the time I got there, the snipers were already incarcerated. So
So one of the reasons you went there, proximity to New York. You didn't feel like you were ready to be in New York City yet, but you wanted to be close enough to get there.
yes. So that is one of the big reasons. And it was just worked out that my sister and her family had moved to Baltimore. And I was like, oh, I visited a couple times, a few times, absolutely loved it. Found out that it was like only 4 hours or so from New York. I was like, that's perfect. I'm not jumping out all the way into the deep end. I'm going to be deep, but not too deep. And so I ended up going there because it was in close proximity. It was on the East Coast, and there were a lot of metropolitan areas there that I felt like I could do some big things. So, all while growing up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, really the only inspiration I had was magazines. And then obviously we were flipping through magazines. So I had stacks and stacks and stacks of magazines. I used to bring the magazines that they no longer wanted home from the doctor's office because I just wanted to look at all these magazines, the hair, the makeup, and just the fashion, everything. And so close proximity to those metropolitan areas. Back then, 106 in Park was very popular, and music videos. So I used to watch music videos day in and day out. And I used to look at the makeup and the makeup on the video girls. And I used to look at the makeup on Sherry Carter and Donnie Simpson. And then it was Free and AJ. Like, I was looking at all the makeup, all the things. And that was like one of those things where I was like, wow, I would love to do that, but I'm never going to be able to get the opportunity to do that because I'm in Kalamazoo. So that was one of my thoughts. Like, I never thought a lot of the things, probably most of the things that I've had opportunity to do would ever be possible because I was from Kalamazoo. But when I moved there, everything just opened up.
See, that's the surprising thing. Just a move can change everything. And that was then. Now you could live anywhere and have opportunity. And that's the great thing about opportunity now is that location does not preclude you from success.
Yes, that's very true.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the Start Right Here podcast and leave a review. Also, you can sign up for our mailing list at thebeautyroundtable.com so you will be on the know about all the good things coming. And you've preempted because you've worked lots of places, but we're going to find out how and how you made decisions. So we're going to backtrack and get to leaving Michigan to get to New York. So you went to Baltimore first.
Went to Baltimore first. Started working because I was like, oh, how am I going to make money? Like, I need clients. And so I've never really had to start super fresh from make to build the clientele because I've had these clients. Some of my clients I still have today, again, was from way back. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. So I ended up finding a really, really good salon to work in. It was in a popular area. I went in to visit, talked to the owner. They were super busy. Like every stylist in there was super busy. So I'm like, okay, I think this is a salon that I need to work at. However, I had started at another salon that was downtown. And back then, downtown Baltimore was really not popping and was not the place to be because it was a little sketchy. I had a really hard time building clientele there. So I found this new salon. So I started in the salon, but again, I needed to build. Well, in the midst of that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and work at the mall and do some makeup. And that's going to be like my consistent pay until I could build these clientels in the chair. And I was able to land a job with MAC Cosmetics. Now, this is like I've always done hair and makeup, not necessarily in that, I guess, in that way, because we didn't have that in Kalamazoo. Like there was not even a MAC store, a MAC counter, or anything in Kalamazoo. The closest one was in Detroit. So I was like, you know what? This line is popping. It was like Mac back then. We call them Mac OGs. Like the Mac OGs really know. Back then it was popping. And if you didn't work for Mac, are you really a makeup artist? Like so I was like, you know what? I'm going to Mac. And I went to Nordstrom. At the time, I was living with my sister. So it was really close to where they lived. And I was like, I'm just going to do it. Now, mind you, I didn't know what to expect, the interview, nothing like that. So I brushed up on my skills. I went on the website of Sebastian, but Sebastian actually had makeup back then. So I went on the website and I found me a look from their website. And I was like, you know what? This is the look I'm going to do for this interview. Went into interview, met with the cosmetic manager first, and then I had to do the MAC makeup interview with the MAC manager. And they were like, oh my God, you're amazing. How long have you been doing makeup? And I wanted to say, literally, I've been doing it for a long time, but on myself. But I didn't say that because back then there was no YouTube University. So doing makeup on yourself was not going to get you anywhere. They wanted to know how long were you really doing makeup on other people. So I was like, I've been a cosmetologist. I played up my cosmetology because then, that entails makeup. And so they were like, oh my gosh, you did so good. We rarely get someone to do this well on the intake, like a makeover. And so they were really excited. I got hired. And that ended up still to this day being one of my favorite jobs. So I was able to work there. I got so many clients from the Mac counter coming to me to the salon. I was able to build up my clientele with people that were having fashion shows and weddings and just all the things. And I started growing not only in the salon and building my personal book at the makeup counter, but I started doing a lot of freelance work, which I never really anticipated. I don't think I really even knew what that was going from Kalamazoo. So that's what happened. And I landed an opportunity to become like a speaker slash hair color expert for L'Oreal for this event that they were doing. And I got hired for that job. And that's where I started building. That was like in 2003. I started building my relationships and rapport with L'Oreal. And I still have a relationship with them today. So
And you built that relationship and was able to go and work for them for a number of years.
yes, so that particular event ended up being an ongoing event from 2003 to 2009. Every summer, it was like every summer through fall. It was a consumer event where we would go to the state fairs, like the largest state fairs of the country. We had this beautiful, like elaborate tent in the middle of the state fair. And we were teaching people about how to find their right hair color with box color, like doing your at-home hair color. And then though that event that I started at was solely about hair color, but then it evolved into this whole like beauty experience. So we were doing hair color, hair care, makeup, and skincare. And that event came about for 9 years every summer. Sometimes we would do multiple state fairs throughout that time. And so, if you know anything about the state fair, it sometimes attracts people that you would never encounter in a Nordstrom. Like this demographic, a lot of times would never step foot into a Nordstrom. So it, again, me being all about diversity and wanting to work with different hair types and different skin tones and complexions and things like that, it opened that up for me because we got all types of people. And I mean, when I say all types of people, some of those people, we would be like, girl, could you have washed your bra before you came in yesterday? It was a very interesting like demographic of people, but it was such an amazing event. And I was able to build the relationships with the people that actually was developing the hair color in New York City, and they absolutely loved me. And that's how it got me to New York for 9 years, like years down the road, though. So, starting in 2003, in 2014, I set out to New York to work with my then boss, which was one of the people that would come and work with us on this state fair. It was called the Color Space. They would work with us on this event. And I called her up because I had did a consumer event in Beverly Hills, and we hadn't been doing a lot of consumer events. They were sort of like doing away with it, but then something came up. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it was so fun. Everything just came back to me. I didn't lose any of that knowledge or forget the product or anything. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to call Julia and tell her that I worked this event with Donna and blah, blah, blah. And so I called Julia, and the lady took the message, and she's like, well, hold on. And so she came back. She's like, oh my gosh, she wants you to call her back. She's in a board meeting right now. She can't get on the phone, but she wants you to call her back like in 30 minutes. And I was like, okay, cool. So called back in 30 minutes. Julia gets on the phone, Cataanda. I'm like, hey, Julia, hi. She's like, are you here? And I'm like, am I where? And she's like, are you in New York? And I'm like, no. She's like, can you get to New York? Mind you, I can't get word in edgewise. She's just going all in. And she's like, can you get to New York? I'm like, yeah, but like, what am I getting to New York for? She's like, I need you in New York. Can you get to New York by next week? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. But like, what am I going to be doing? She's like, I need you here for 10 weeks. I'm like, okay. And mind you, we used to work those events that would be sometimes 10 weeks. Sometimes they were just for like 30 days, or there were multiple events all together. Like we did a mall tour and all this stuff. So she's like, just 10 weeks. And I was like, okay, yeah. She's like, well, I need you to let me know for sure. She's like, oh, obviously we're going to pay you really well, but we don't have money to put you up in a hotel for 10 weeks. So do you have someone that you could stay with? And I was like, I don't know. I think so. I could figure it out. So she's like, okay, figure it out and get back to me on Tuesday. It was like over the 4th of July weekend. And she's like, call me back on Tuesday. I need you here, and I need you here next week. I was like, okay. So one of those things where I go where the opportunity is. Figure it out. Like, I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to get there. So I ended up going there. I set out to that job for that opportunity, thinking I was only going to be in New York for 10 weeks. Didn't know what was going to happen after the 10 weeks, but that's been pretty much the story of my career. I just go for the opportunity. I don't know what's happening next. I leave that to God. And so went there for 10 weeks, and it ended up being 9 years.
So, what was the role when you got there? And then what did it turn into?
So the role when I got there was a part-time role. I was working like pretty much 3 days, sometimes 4 days, and then it was super busy. I would work maybe 5 days. But it was in the testing center where we did all the testing for all of the CPD brands across L'Oreal. So just for those of you that may not know, that entails L'Oreal Paris, Garnier, It entails Carol's Daughter at the time, because 2014 is the year that Carol's Daughter had gotten acquired. So Carol's Daughter was included, Dark and Lovely, and Soft Sheen Carson. So we were testing all those products across all those brands. And as a hairstylist and a hairstylist of many years, and even as like a beauty consultant and contractor for L'Oreal for many, many years, I didn't know what I was doing in product testing. And that's when I asked her, like, are you sure you want? Because I know she's like, don't worry. I know you. I know how you work, and you're going to get this and you're going to be fine. And so I went there to test products with the rest of the team there. And it was just like something that I had never done. And really, I didn't know that this even existed, if that makes sense. Because as a hairstylist, we just pick up the products and use it, and we expect it to do what it says it's going to do and what we need it to do for the hair. But it's so much that goes into it. Product testing is like, I still say, and I tell all of my clients, new clients and existing clients, or indie brands that I'm speaking to, I tell them you cannot miss on your product testing. It's the most important thing for cosmetics, hair, beauty brands in general, but it's specifically for hair care and specifically for textured hair. Like, you cannot skip the product testing. And a lot of brands do skip the product testing if they're not a huge beauty giant like L'Oreal or like Unilever or Procter and Gamble, because they don't have the budget or they don't have the resources for testing. Like L'Oreal has a whole testing facility, like a testing salon dedicated to testing with a full team that works with the labs and the chemists. And L'Oreal has their own labs and chemists. And it's just something you can't skip on, because without product testing, how do you know that the product's working? How do you know that it works for this particular hair type, this particular style technique? You don't. And it saves you a lot, especially in the long run. Trust me, you want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence. And if you have to skimp on something, it is not product testing or education, because product testing and education go hand in hand. So, yeah, that's what I was doing.
And then as you continue to do that, how did your role change?
Again, I started off as timer, and I was doing that in the technical center, but then style teams and style squads opened up with some of the other brands. So I was on the style squad, the inaugural style squad for Carol's Daughter, and also then Dark and Lovely. So I started doing that as well. I started doing a lot with commercials when it came to certain opportunities, because I was the part-timer, and so they could pull me away from the technical center to go out and do those other jobs. So I've done commercials that have aired on Vogue's media page, and like, doing all this things that I could have never imagined. And I ended up just not only doing product testing, I ended up doing a lot with education, because with we call them multicultural beauty, is what they call them or refer to them at L'Oreal. We have like someone that's very, very knowledgeable. She's like the ultimate educator. I learned so much from her. Like, even being in that position, working alongside her, I was always the one that she would teach a class to maybe like the beauty advisors for certain retailers. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, Patty, can I come in on the class? And she's like, why do you need to come in on this class? I'm like, because I can never learn enough. So that was me. But I started doing that with the other brands, Dark and Lovely, Carol's Daughter, because they didn't have their own testing team. It was all of us just in general in the testing. So they would ask me, because I became their texture expert. And that's how they referred to me at the L'Oreal Technical Center in New York. And even people across the globe, and the Paris people come and they're like, hey, we need a texture expert. We have people coming from New Mexico and like just Mexico City and all these places around the world, even in South Africa. I was the known texture expert for L'Oreal, because everything happened at the L'Oreal Technical Center. Even after being tested in Paris, they would bring it to the US, to us in New York, to test there, because Things are different with hair in different regions and different countries.
So, again, as I said, coming from Kalamazoo to doing that, you never thought you would be able to do that. And even saying it, you're like, "Oh my god, I did that."
I did that. So my very first international trip with L'Oreal was a trip to Spain. And let me just tell you, not only have I put in the work, have I, been in this industry for so long, but I am favored by God because I went to work on a Friday. And every time I tell the story, people are like, oh my God. I went to work on a Friday, and one of our consultants from Spain, she was working on this huge project. Like we had been working on it literally since 2014 when I first started. I went there in 2019, I believe. So all that time, now I could talk about it because it's out, it's in the stores. So there's this home hair color device. It's actually like a device and it's called Color Sonic. And so we were working on that and they needed to record video on how to actually do the application, how to insert the cartridges with the hair color and how to apply it and so on and so forth. So she was coming back and forth with us at the technical center. We were working on this extensively. We had done like a huge consumer study. And she's like, oh my gosh, we are doing like a educational video. And one of our models has curly hair like Cataanda. And she's like, Cataanda, you need to come in here and speak to us because I have questions on how we should advise this person while they're recording. I'm like, okay, cool. So I go in there, it's her and my boss. And this is like before lunch. And so she asked me the questions. I give her the information. She's like, oh my gosh, that is so good. She's like, we need you there for this. And I was like, well, I'm available. And so we laughed it off. My boss laughed, like, ha ha ha, get out of here. So I came back from lunch and they called me back in there. And I'm thinking they have more questions. Well, they do have more questions. But my boss is like, Katanda, what do you have going over the weekend and next week? I'm like, the weekend, nothing. And next week, I'm working. So she's like, well, Carolina wants to take you to Spain. And I was like, what? So she's like, yes. She's like, we have to have you there. We are going to do everything it takes to get you there. We just wanted to know if you were willing. They're like, do you have your passport? I'm like, I always have an updated passport. What do you mean? Yes. So they're like, okay, we're going to work on it. And again, I'm just thinking nothing of it. Like, I'm not going to show up on a Friday for work and then end up finding myself in Spain in a couple of days. So I'm just like, okay, whatever. This is just wishful thinking. Well, by the end of the day, they're like, Tanda, we need you to stay after a little bit. Do you have time? I'm like, yeah, sure, of course. So they call me back in this boardroom and they're like, we need to look for your flight and hotel. So at this point, I'm like, oh my God, this is really happening. And lo and behold, we got the flight, the hotel. I was going there on that Wednesday, is what it was. I left Wednesday and came back on Monday. And my boss was like, you might as well just stay over the weekend because, it's cheaper to travel back from there on a Monday. So just come back. I'm like, okay. So I went to Spain. I was pretty much like the lead educator in teaching those ladies how to use the device. It was like a language barrier. So they had a translator for me. And I was like very integral in that. So when the product actually launched, I was like, oh my God, they had this huge to do with, I guess it was beauty tech in Las Vegas. It was all over like, the billboards and everything. And I was like, oh my God, like I went to Spain for that informational video and I was so integral in like this whole launch. Like a lot of the things that I've done, it just amazes me. It was super cool. Well, I keep saying that, but it's still like one of the biggest things of my career. I'm super proud of it.
You didn't say that a lot during this interview. So that is one of the highlights that you've been able to accomplish, and that's major. I think that when you're a hairstylist and you think of the things that you can do. People don't often think of the career that you've had, of the roles that you've had, what is possible if you can use your skills in the ways that you had. And it's not that you set out and said, I'm going to do XYZ. It's that you spent the time to build your skills and that you spent the time to build relationships. You kept the relationships going. And that's the key part. It's not like strategic. Like I'm going to be like, oh, I'm going to use this person. I think a lot of times now people are like, make a relationship with this person. I'm going to use this person to get to this part. It's more organic that you create relationships and you stayed in touch with people. Not that you wanted something from that person, that you just organically stayed in touch with people and they said, oh, Katana can do this. Katana can do that. Her skill set fits here. And those things have led to other things. And that is why your career has progressed. And I think that people should be able to see that and take that as an example, as opposed to, oh, let me be strategic and let me build. That may work for some people, but in the long run doesn't always work because at one point, if you're not reciprocal with it, it does not work in the end. People then will find out that you're only out for self. That's what I see. People will say, you don't give back. You're always looking for the end goal. You're not looking for trying to help someone else.
Yeah. I think about it often because people are always like, well, I have a daughter or my cousin or my coworker's niece, and she would be a great person for her to talk to because she wants to know how could she become a celebrity stylist or how could she start doing X, Y, and Z. And I'm always open to talk to people, but I don't have a blueprint. Like you said, I never set out to do any of these things. I just set out for a dream that I knew that I wanted more in this beauty industry. And I knew that the sky was the limit, but I didn't know what exactly it was I wanted or how exactly I was going to get there. And so it's hard a lot of times to sort of like guide them in that way. But I always tell them no matter what, go after your dream, follow your dream, no matter what someone tells you. If you want to move to a place, just move to the place. Like people are always like, well, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. None of my career or my life was planned, not by me. I didn't have a plan. I was like, I'm moving to Baltimore. I didn't have a job. I didn't know what or how it was going to work out. I just knew that I was going to get there and figure it out. So everything is you can figure out.
Right. But you didn't go there and say, I'm not going to work.
Oh no, absolutely not.
Some people say, I'm going to move, but they don't have a plan to work. So there has to be a plan to make money in some way. There has to be a plan with a skill set.
Yes. The goal is always to make money. But if you don't have a plan on how to do it, just go figure it out. The thing about putting yourself in position is just then doors just start opening. Like if you're where you want to be, like then you can figure it out. But if I'm all the way over here in Michigan and saying I'm going to go to Baltimore and further my career, but I'm not there to figure out how to do it because I didn't know what was in Baltimore. I didn't know what the opportunities were. You do have to plan for that. You have to plan to put the work in and you have to plan to figure it out. Even on job interviews, people ask me, well, what's your 10-year plan or your 10-year goal? I really struggle with that question because I'm like, I don't know. I just want to be the best that I can be in my career in 10 years. Like whatever that looks like, I have no idea because the sky is the limit. You never know. Like tomorrow, like when I got that call or when I made that call to Julia, I didn't know that she was going to say she needed me for 10 weeks. I was calling her to say, hey, Julia, thank you. And then I agreed to going there for 10 weeks. Now, that's the one thing you can't overthink opportunities because you don't always need to know the end result. I didn't know what was happening after 10 weeks or where I would go after 10 weeks. I just knew that I had this amazing opportunity for 10 weeks. And I went there and then it ended up being 9 years. So that's the thing. I'm a risk taker. I go for what I want. I do keep relationships because a lot of people aren't good with that. That's something that is part of my character, is part of my personality. I don't care if you haven't called me in 5 years. If you're on my mind and I think about you, I'm going to call you, hey, how's it going? And people don't always do that because also on the flip side of things, people are like, oh, well, that person hasn't reached out to me. I'm not going to reach out to them. You never know what somebody is going through. You never know what type of time they have. You may have crossed this person's mind 100 times and they just, for whatever reason, have not had the opportunity to pick up the phone. I'm going to be that friend. I tell people all the time, if I love you, you're stuck with me for life. Like if I truly, truly honest and rock with you, you're stuck with me. Right? Even you, Corinne, I'm going to be like, hey, what's the, you're stuck with me now.
You've been on my podcast, you're in for life. That's it.
Yes, you're in for life. And so I have always done that. I've seen clients that I've had or people that I've worked with, their children are now grown ups. And I'm like, oh my gosh, one of my clients in Baltimore, when I moved there, her daughter just turned 18. Her name's Sydney. This little girl was like 4, 3, 5, 6 the whole time I was doing her mom's hair. And we had this whole conversation about relaxer because her mom was getting relaxer then. And she would always ask me, what's in the big bucket? I would have to explain to her what was in the big bucket. And so I always like try to encourage her mom to stop getting relaxer because she had like the most manageable hair texture. I'm like, girl, you don't even need this relaxer. But she was like, I can't go with the relaxer. I work out with this and that. And so Sydney has never had a relaxer to this day. And I played a big part in that. Her mom eventually stopped getting relaxer because she said that she didn't want Sydney to have to get what was in the big bucket in her hair when she was old enough. And so that's how I remember Sydney. She was a little girl. What's in the big bucket, Cataanda? And she would ask me that every single time, like, what's in the big bucket? And now Sydney has been relaxer free all of her life.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great story. Well, what people will get from this is that you can chart your own course if you're really authentic to yourself and you know what you want. But I think that being open to opportunities is really critical and recognizing the opportunities when they come your way.
Yes.
But tell us about leaving L'Oreal and going to the other opportunity before you starting your consulting job.
We all know the pandemic happened. I was still working with L'Oreal. We were fortunate enough to be able to work through the pandemic. Like we didn't get laid off or anything. We were able to work from home. And everyone knows, like friends, family, now you know, and now you guys will know. I still love my job that I had at L'Oreal. And we went back into the office after this pandemic, and so much shifted. Obviously, we knew a lot of changes happened, and we were not able to work the way that we worked prior to. When I tell you that place, we were constantly on the go. When I mean on the go, I mean on our feet, running around. We rarely sat down throughout the course of the day testing products. This is how I know how important testing is. This is all we did is testing products. We didn't have any other role within the company. We tested products and it was day in and day out, 40 hours a week, 5 days a week. And so there were times where we would have 40 heads. There are times when the French would come and we would have 60 heads. Like it was crazy amounts of numbers of people and productivity going on. But I absolutely loved it. So going back from the pandemic, it was so different. We went from having our full team in the office together. They had to split us up into 2 separate teams. We couldn't have more than 3 models in the testing facility with us, with the other workers. So it was very slow. Throughout the course of the day, that 8-hour period, I feel like we were only able to do 3 each. So 3 testing models each. or maybe 4, something like that. But it was so slow. And I got to the point where I started to lose my passion, which that has never happened to that extent. And it wasn't because I started disliking my job. It was because of the changes that had happened because of the pandemic and how we had to work. So it was not anything that anyone planned for, and it wasn't anyone's fault. It was the fault of the pandemic. And so I was like, I can't let this happen because I didn't want to start losing my passion and then not performing like I should, not being the person that I am. They would always say, "Oh my gosh, Cataanda, you're so calm." Because it would get crazy in there and I would just be so chill and calm. And they would be like, "You're so calm." I'm like, "Yeah, it's just shampoo and conditioner. It's not that serious. It's going to work out." And so I started finding myself feeling on edge, and not on edge in a good way, like not on edge as like anticipation, but on edge as like irritable, maybe a little. And so I was like, something has to happen. And I knew nothing was going to happen quickly with the way that we worked because everything had just started opening up. And so I started looking for other opportunities. And one day I went onto LinkedIn and there was this hair care brand that even while working at L'Oreal, I was so intrigued by this brand because of what the founder was able to do in such a short period of time. And just the type of formulas that she had created, starting in her kitchen. And so I went on there. I found at the time she was a vice president of marketing. Randomly sent her a message. We weren't friends prior to that or anything. I randomly sent her a message. It was like, "Hey, how could someone like me get a job with a company like yours?" And so, of course, my name's Cataanda. I do this and that and blah, blah, blah. And she responded almost immediately. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I was just talking to my CEO about meeting someone like you. This is not a coincidence." And I was like, "Oh my goodness." So lo and behold, ended up going to work for that company. Once it was at my fingertips, I was like, "Oh my gosh, do I really want to leave L'Oreal? Do I really want to do this?" And I was like, "You know what? I have to try something different." I needed change in that moment. And so throughout my story, I've spoken a lot about just me being changed, whether it's a change in city, environment, whatever. I needed that change. So I did it. And it was very sad. I actually cried when I had to send back my laptop and everything. My coworkers were devastated. My boss was like, "No." I was like, "Yes." And so I went to work for the Main Choice, which is a multicultural hair care brand that had been recently acquired by a larger brand that was Canadian based. And the founder was no longer at the helm of the brand, but I wanted to go and work for this textured curly hair brand that focused solely on curly hair textures. And curly hair or textured hair was not an afterthought. It was the main course of action and making sure that we were creating products solely for curly hair. It wasn't like by happenstance or, "Oh, we need to jump on this now because curly hair is popular in this movement." This is what this brand was created for. So I got the opportunity, and it was a smaller brand. I had worked for the biggest beauty company in the world for so long. I was like, I wonder what it would be like to go and work for a brand like that. So I took the leap of faith and went to work for the brand. I was the brand educator for 2 years. And I learned so much working in that company for that brand, working for that smaller brand. I learned that L'Oreal University is the best university that I could have ever gone to as it relates to this beauty industry. Because even now, even in my consultancy, I use so much of what I've learned and what I've attained from L'Oreal, and I put that into my business practices now. So that's what happened. It got to the point where there was like a big changeover. We got a new CEO at the Main Choice, and they didn't have the budget that I was used to at L'Oreal. They paid me really well, like they had the budget. But as far as like empowering me to do my job as an educator, they didn't have the budget. I didn't do any shoots. I couldn't do like all the cool things that I was doing at L'Oreal. I couldn't like train the beauty advisors at the retailers. There was a lot that I couldn't do because we didn't have the budget. And so once again, I started to lose like the momentum, and the morale was down with the entire team because of those things. And I was like, I'm going to stick it out because I'm super loyal. Like, if you know anything from this story, you can find that I'm super loyal. I will give you the time, the work. I'm doing that because I'm super loyal, because I want everyone to win. Like, I want all the brands to win. So I was like, something has to happen, but I'm like, I'm gonna stick it out because change is gonna come. Like, we're gonna get bigger budgets. We're just working through the whole acquisition, because remember, I had gone through that with L'Oreal and Carol's daughter, and it takes a long time to fully get onboarded, to fully get like up to speed. It takes a long time. And mind you, this was the only Black brand that this company had. So they didn't know the culture. They didn't know the hair category. They didn't know the lingo. Like, it was a lot that they didn't know. And I wanted to stick around to be able to help them in that, because I know all these things. Like, this is my expertise. And it just didn't happen. And so I was like, I'm going to stick it out though. I'm going to stay on board. I decided to start thinking about opening up my own company again. I didn't know what that would look like. There were days, yes, of course, where I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot do this job. I'm just going to quit. But I was like, no, Katana, you're going to stick it out. And so once again, me and my peeps, my friends, my ex-colleagues and mentors, and then one was actually my boss on the style squad at Carol's daughter. Each of them, one was a social media director that I worked with on Carol's daughter. The other one was like my boss on the style squad. And they both hit me up. My boss on the style squad has since moved on to another brand within L'Oreal. And he was like, we have a testing project and I need you to test this product. And I was like, you do realize I work for another hair care brand, right? And he's like, yes, I know you. I've worked with you forever. You know how to keep trade secrets. You're going to be on an NDA anyway, whatever, whatever. But I need you to test this. And I was like, okay, well, let me try to, figure it out. Cause again, super loyal. And I was like, I'll get back to you in the next day or so. He's like, okay, you don't have a lot of time because it needs to move quickly. So I'm like, okay. Well, in the meantime, I am already in conversation with at the time he was like the social media director for Dark and Lovely. And he's like, oh my gosh, we need you as a hair color expert, as our brand ambassador for the year of 2023. And I was like, but I work for this other hair care brand, right? He's like, yeah, whatever it takes. I don't know if you need to leave them or we need to pay you, but whatever it takes, you're the person that I want for this. So I had these two opportunities dangling in the air, and I didn't know how to navigate or fix it. So at this point, when it gets to this, because once again, like I said, I never know what's coming up the pike. So I very rarely say no to things because I do not know this door open for a reason. I'm not going to say no. It's going to have to shut down for me to not take it. I'm not going to shut it down myself. So I was like, all right, I'm going to get back to you. So lo and behold, I'm still, negotiating because that stuff takes time. And I get this random email like, hey, Cataanda, the CEO wants to speak to you from the Main Choice. So I was like, okay. And this is around like, we're doing year-end reviews. And I'm like, all right. So I felt it. I knew it. I felt it coming, but I was like, I don't know. It could be something else. Mind you, I still have these two other amazing things. So that started prior to the end of the year. So I actually knocked that out. That was like a 6-week assignment. So I was able to knock it out. It wasn't a direct conflict of interest or conflicts of interest at all because it was working with hair color. The Main Choice doesn't produce, or any other brand within that company doesn't produce hair color. So I was able to do that, killed it, moved on. So now I have this Dark and Lovely thing. So I met with the CEO and he's giving me the spill. Well, they eliminated my role as beauty educator because they didn't have the budget for me to do what I needed to do. And so basically they're paying me really well for a job that I really could not do to the capacity that I need to do it in to help elevate this brand. And I mean, I would sit around, I would complete my work the first week for the entire month. And I'm asking them, hey, you guys. And they're like, well, you can't do that because we don't have this. Or, oh, you can't do that. We need to talk to them about this budget. So, really, it was good in the sense for them, especially, it was a good business decision, obviously. But for me, it was too, because again, remember, I'm losing my morale. My passion is like, ugh. And I only had to log in. So, I'm dreadful for logging on. You don't have to really do much for that. Just turn the laptop on. And I was like in my inside cheering, like, oh my God, because I didn't have to let it go. It worked out as I knew it would. And so he was like, are you okay? Because I was kind of silent at first. And I was like, oh, yes, I am fine. He's like, we would love for you to like tidy up things before you leave, whenever, however long you think that takes, if that's 2 weeks. I was like, no, I could work through the end of the month because I wanted to like set them up for success. And he was like, oh gosh, that's perfect. We love that, you're dedicated for the rest of the month. Negotiated severance pay and like health benefits was big for me, so on and so forth. Mind you, this all happened 2 days after I told the guy, yes, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do this dark and lovely and brand ambassadorship. 2 days. If I would have told him no, I would have been stuck with nothing. This is why I say, do not say no. And that's how it all worked out with that. So I had that amazing opportunity as brand ambassador. And then I got a couple months prior to that. This is super cool and like still a highlight. They had reformulated their hair color brand Anoa, and they needed the testing in the US. So I was the US tester, like facilitator of this test for the US. And I was able to do that in 6 weeks with like 20 something models. I was like a one man show. I worked with the junior manager to help me book the people, but I had to do the testing. I had to read the color. I had to give the feedback and redirects to marketing as to the nuances that I found. And like, it was a very intense test for a one man show, but I did it. I'm super proud of it.
It's amazing. Like I said, there is more to a cosmetology degree than people think. This is what you have to know. More than what anybody would imagine. Katanja, I can't thank you enough for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Any last words for our audience?
Yes. My last words would be just do it. I mean, I'm not advocating or I'm not promoting Nike, but that slogan that they have is so relatable in so many ways throughout life. Just do it. If you can dream it, just do it. Whatever that looks like. It might be scary. I've done things terrified, but do it. And the biggest thing is what's for you is for you. It will not pass you by. If it's for you, it's yours already. Like you don't have to do anything but to walk in it. And that's what I've done. I've just walked in the opportunities and the blessings that God gave me. If I didn't walk into them, they wouldn't be mine. So in order to achieve them, you have to walk into them. So yeah, and then just trust God. Me building this consultancy, it's hard to start a business and to run a business. And this is like my sole salary. And sometimes I don't have consulting clients and it gets scary. But do I quit? No, I don't quit because I've been there before. I've been there where I didn't know what was coming next. And like I said earlier, it's not always what's coming next because the what's next is already done. You just have to complete where you are to get to the what's next.
I wholeheartedly agree, though, because you are standing firm in what you believe and also walking in your purpose. That is what it is. You believe in what you're doing and wholeheartedly walking in the purpose of what you're supposed to be doing and believe that. So, walk in your purpose, people. That's it. Thank you, Katanda. Cataanda James, everybody. Now, what's the name of your business? And let's hear what your social handles are, please.
Okay, so the name of my company is CJ The Beauty Group, and I am on Instagram at CJ The Beauty Group. But I am also on the brand as my own brand, Cataanda James, and Instagram, Threads, Twitter, Facebook is at Cataanda J, and my name is spelled CATAANDA J.
All right.
Oh, my website, in case brands are watching, you need me. Trust me, you do. And my web address is www.katandaj.com.
There you go. Say it again.
www.katandaj.com. And that's CATAANDAJ.com.
Got it.
Thank you.
That's our show for today. Remember, we stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us and make a way for those who come behind us. Remember to follow at Start Right Here and at the Beauty Table Collective, and to subscribe to The Last Word on Substack. See you next time.